I see you've found our little hiding spot in the universe. Don't get too comfortable. This is a place where you will find those with an experience that's out of this world, or possibly deep within your life. I welcome you to the Oracles with James Tyson. Lean forward and listen. We will pull you into a supernatural journey with guests from around the world, each one experiencing some of the most extraordinary phenomena this wee planet has to offer. Now, here are the Oracles with James Tyson.
Thank you, Liam, and thank you, listener, for tuning into this episode of the Oracles with James Tyson. I am James Tyson, and today I want to bring you episode 1 of 2, because we don't get much more than 2, episode 1 of 2 with our guest, Akiane Kramarik. And if you want to check out who she is, just go to her website, akiane.com. That's AKIANE.com. She has been featured on hundreds of media outlets, documentaries, and television and radio shows, starting far back as Oprah Winfrey, Katie Couric, World News Tonight, Good Morning America, Glenn Beck, Fox News, Montel Williams, and even my buddy Craig Ferguson, back when Craig still had a show, and I wish he's back. Akiane is, well, how can I describe her? She has been called a binary genius. That is, a genius on 2 levels or 2 disciplines. She's considered the youngest binary prodigy in both realistic art and poetry and recorded history. The works that she created at the age of 8 reached and exceeded the maturity level of a seasoned artist. And it's kind of interesting how all that started. At the age of 4, woke up one day and literally had lived in a dilapidated old shack in Illinois, or in the corner of an Illinois cornfield, homeschooled, no television, no radio. Family, or mother and father, are atheists. She does have younger siblings, so you can imagine at the age of 4, they may not even been born, or they were very, very small. And she got out of bed and went into the kitchen and told her mother that a gentleman named Jesus came in the night and took her up into the heavens, into the universe, and pointed out a few things and had to talk to her about some stuff. And Mom probably had a conniption because had no idea where Akiane would have got that name from. They lived in such a rural area that there weren't any neighborhood kids to play with. So she was basically with her mother all day long. No Bible in the house. Again, no television, no radio. And now Akiane comes up and says, Jesus came and took me in the universe, and this is what it looks like. At the age of 4, she started doodling. And her doodles were at a level that you would see probably a high school kid doodling in the back of their book, or even older. She actually paints from looking at somebody. Now, she needs a model to paint from, and she wanted to paint the Jesus person. So for, 4 years, she and her mother kept an eye out for the tall, chestnut-haired gentleman with a beard to see if it would fit, and looked at numerous people, and no, none of them fit. And also, she developed, in those 4 years, from the age of 4 to the age of 8, her skills in painting. And if you go over to her website, again, akiane.com, and look at her gallery, her artwork is broken down in what she did in certain years of her life, age 8, 9, 10. We take it at age 8. One of the neighbors was having work done at their house, a carpenter. Yeah, I know, right? The carpenter was actually working there, and he was a tall, chestnut-haired guy with a beard. And they told him about who Akiane, one of their neighbors, was looking for a model to paint, and if he'd go down there. And sure enough, he did. He knocked on the door, and Aki answered it and looked at him and said, yeah, you're the guy. Painted him, his portrait, and again, it's called The Prince of Peace. And that's the one you'll see if you go back if you were to travel back in time to Oprah Winfrey and things like that. And you'd recognize that at the time it was extremely popular in the media. This little 8-year-old girl had painted this great big oil painting of a person she believed was Jesus. The controversy flew from that. Also, the Shroud of Turin was placed electronically or computer imagery over her painting, and it matched perfectly. And we can get into that argument all you want, but not today, because today we're going to talk a little bit more about Akiane. Here's some quotes she had, and if you're wondering where her mind's at or what kind of a human she is, I'll give you a couple of quotes that Akiane stated back at the age of 8. Here's one. Only when we are filled with light, we cannot live unnoticed. So here's your 8-year-old niece comes up to you and says something like, only from the deep cold tunnels, white diamonds come, but only by the light they are recognized. First of all, she was in my family. She scared the heck out of me. Receive life like a gift and release it like a present. So these are the kind of things that Akiane at the age of 8 was coming up with in the family. Other than that, she's pretty much a normal girl who hangs out with the family and travels. She speaks Lithuanian, English, Russian, American Sign Language, and Japanese. Her mother tongue is Lithuanian, so you'll detect a little bit of an accent when she's speaking. And Lithuanian actually is the oldest Indo-European language, closest to Sanskrit. Just thought I'd throw that in there just because, I read that somewhere, probably on Akiane's website, because it's filled with little tidbits about things like that. She paints about 4 hours a day, sketches up to 2 hours a day, searches for real-life models or reference material, about 2 hours of those days, and during travel prefers conceptualizing, planning, and sketching and photographing instead of painting. So she's very quick in putting things together. What is also really interesting about Akiane, she has an interesting life schedule. She goes to bed before 9 o'clock at night and wakes up around 2:30 in the morning and starts her day. And she'd rather just kind of live in her little art gallery at home, in her studio. That's where she grows, and that's where she does her work. She doesn't have a driver's license, but she can fly a Cessna. If you're interested in taking her up on a cross-country trip, you'll have to drive to the airport, but once you're in, you can jump in the plane with her. An amazing young woman. We're going to catch up to her. We're going to ask her some stuff that other interviews with her you're not going to hear. Akiane's going to describe to you things, and for my listener who follows things that are more of the, I don't want to say supernatural, but the more of the, what we always call woo-woo, light beings, out-of-body traveling, and things like this. Aki describes those things happening to her, but being where she's grown up and how she's grown up and the protection she has, and of course not accessing a lot of social media and things like that, it's all new to her. It's amazing to her to hear that other people have actually had those experiences. What she describes, I kind of point out to her that, you should read a book by so-and-so, or maybe, you should think of it this way, or what do you think about that? And we get into those kind of little philosophical discussions briefly, because I'm not the philosophical kind. And me talking to a genius is, it's embarrassing. So we're going to bring her on. Again, this is episode 1 of 2, and it's with Akiane Kramarik. Again, Akiane.com, AKIANE.com. Aki, how are you and the family doing?
We're doing wonderful. How are you?
I am fine. My listener is giddy because we are great fans and loving your work. For those who are just kind of bumping into you, could you tell me a little bit about yourself? I have to confess, I heard about you back when you were just a little baby on the Oprah show, and saw you there, and I was floored. I became a fan back then. But what happened before? What were you, about 9 when you were on Oprah?
Yes, it was when I was 9, but my whole journey started roughly around when I was 3.5, 4 years old. And at the time, I grew up in a family where it's a very open-minded and nurturing environment. I didn't go to school at the time. I was very nature schooled, you could say. I grew up with very supportive parents and brothers, and I think that was a very good foundation for me in my beginning life. So around 3.5, 4 years old, I began expressing my creativity. And when I started seeing dreams and I started seeing visions, I began to draw them so I could record them somehow. And you would see me every day in the corner trying to perfect and trying to redraw all my visions and all my dreams that I was seeing every single day. And whatever I used on hand, it could be candles, it could be vegetables, charcoal, just you name it. I used it just to record it. And my mother noticed my work from that point on. She really started supporting me in my ventures. And at 6 years old, I began experimenting with color pastels and in acrylics. But by 8 years old, I completed my first 5-foot-long oil painting that took me about 40 hours to complete. And then about roughly around when I was 9 years old, we got a call, and that call was from the Oprah Winfrey Show. And after much hard work and a lot of showcasing my art, she noticed my talent, and she invited me to her show. And from that point on, I published 2 books, and I was featured more than 200 international and television shows and documentaries, and also my story was featured in the Heaven is for Real feature movie and best-selling book. But right now I'm extremely my heart is into charities right now, so I love to contribute to a lot, and that's kind of who I am inside, to help a lot of people and to inspire people. So right now I completed over 300 pieces of works and donated hundreds of thousands to charity, and going to hopefully in the future build some Academy of Arts and Sciences.
It's almost like everything you've done ever since a child, other than the expression of your visions to probably, as a very, very little one, to say, Mom, Dad, this is what I see. Mm-hmm. I couldn't, at that age, you don't have the words for them. So this is...
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Because when I was a child, I very rarely spoke, actually, because I always felt that it's not tangible enough. So I needed to do something more vibrant and physical, more physical, tangible, substance. And I think painting was my gateway to that creativity world.
Everything that you said and where you want to go in your future is all giving someone else something.
Mm-hmm. That's what I believe. I think we're all here on this planet that we have to, in a way, find the best of ourselves, but at the same time give what you know and what you can create to others so they could pass it on to another person. And I think that chain reaction is extremely important in humanity.
It's that giving that connects us to our neighbor, our brothers and sisters. We seem to want to make them either pass on a message to them or make them feel good. And that in turn, that makes us whole and makes us feel good.
Absolutely. Because ideas are extremely valuable and inspirational. I think we all can share ideas, and it's priceless. And yeah.
Do your parents still have those sketches from when you were 3.5, 4?
This is the funniest thing, back when I was that age, I was such a perfectionist. I would throw away my drawings constantly. And behind my back, which I did not know until a couple of years ago, my mom or my brothers or my dad would go and, secretly take the drawing out of the garbage can, and they kept quite a few drawings, and hopefully in my book that I'm going to be publishing, my new book this year, will showcase almost all of those earlier works.
Oh, that would be fantastic, because those are the ones that, as somebody old
in age at 22 can look back on and say, oh, at 4, I drew a face, and it's amazing that I did that at 4.
That is so true.
Looking back, you now have that kind of little history of, oh, this is how I morphed into the perfection of the faces and moved on. Your style and your art, how did you think at the time? Now, you grew up without television, you grew up without radio. Mm-hmm. My belief is, and this is just throwing my belief out here, is that children have a gift at birth, and eventually we get polluted by science, religion, and we get told what we should think and told what, and I see you and your mother being a teacher, you yourself is a blank canvas. And you just opened up, and then you could go in whatever direction you want and be guided in any direction you want.
That's a very beautiful thing that you just said, because I absolutely agree wholeheartedly that every child has, just like that blank canvas, there are the most purest people on the planet, because they have everything together at that very moment. And I think the moment we start forcing boxes into them and forcing ideas is the moment that their selves are destroyed. So I think being in that pure environment is extremely helpful for the child's upbringing.
I've read interviews I've seen them, where from when you were a child, like the Oprah show, and it's your heartfelt belief that your talent for painting is a gift and your teacher is God. Is that God helping you express yourself? Was it a quicker way possibly to express yourself, or how do you kind of reconcile with that?
This is a very interesting question, because my view of what God is might be different from yours, for example, or from, a person from India or China or Russia. I think in my experience, the connection that I have with spirituality is so everybody's different, so to speak. So my version of God is almost what I can explain is this immense love that actually you can communicate with. It's this energy source that is with everybody at the same time, and but you can have a relationship. It's a very complicated. It's very complicated to explain, but what I wanted to say is, yes, spirituality and having a relationship with God is for me very helpful with my creativity, because through the unfiltered lenses, I could see the world with beauty, and that's why I love art, because I could put my time, my energy, my physical energy into making that happen, making that beauty stand out.
I guess you're more familiar now than you were when you're 9 years old with the term channeling. Is that kind of how you, if you could use the layman's term of channeling, and I don't mean as some of my friends say, the voodoo kind of channeling, but the channeling of letting something flow through you to create. Is that how you may look back now and explain a little bit of the painting you did when you were very, very young?
You know what? I think the best way I can describe, I believe what channeling to me is almost like a liquid inspiration that goes through inside your body. And I believe that everyone on this planet has that capability to receive that channeling, that liquid inspiration. And from every painting that I do, ever since I was a child, I felt that just overcome me, and it's extremely important. It's extremely vital in my point of view that being in touch with that is very, very, very beautiful, and I think everyone should try it when it comes to creativity.
Oh, I've tried it, but my faces are all wonky. I can get one side well, but the other. Anyway, I'd rather just look at your paintings. They're really good.
Too kind, James.
One of the greatest photographs I've seen of you painting was you, and you're wearing a blue sweater doing a self-portrait.
Oh, the turquoise eyes. Yes.
The turquoise eyes. That is, there's three of you in that photograph, and it's amazing. And that is the type of painting that, to me, it's almost like a transfer of energy. You're putting yourself onto a one-dimensional surface, but it still looks, so three-dimensional because of the energy that's in it. Not, we always say in paintings, if you put the little, like the white speck in the eyes, it looks like it's following you around, and there's tricks you can put to bring it out in certain things. But that painting has an energy in it that it looks like your face is a little bit turned. It looks like you're just about to turn your face. And it's I want to say creepy. It's an interesting painting. That self-portrait looks like you're in a hesitation, thinking about something, and you're about to turn and look at the person looking at you. That is a painting that does something psychologically to me. It's almost like you're waiting for you to turn. Some of your other paintings, similarly, they're the religious-based ones, where you can almost see your eyes in some of the subjects. Your eyes. What is it about the eyes? Your eyes are, when you paint eyes, it's crazy.
This is such a thing about art with me. When someone asks me what's the most important thing on the canvas, what do you do first? I'm like, what's your favorite part to start? I always start with the eyes because, to me, they are the most important because you actually can see the entire story, the entire memories, the entire future, the past inside just that one glance. And with every painting that I do, I wanted to capture a whole life in 1 second. And hopefully I was able to do that with my works. But, it's very interesting when you mention every single painting that I do. I almost unconsciously try to get into that mood for that particular painting. For example, if it was the turquoise eyes that we just mentioned, I would put myself into that position where it is that world where it has that the turquoise color, the raw, very silent emotion that does not require words. I'm trying to get into that character, and almost every single painting that I do would have an emotion and a character, a story, a whole world behind it. And that's what I try to create with art.
And you do a gosh darn good job, young lady.
Oh, well, thank you so much, James.
Yeah, it humbles me. There's one of your paintings of a child in blue fabric around his face.
The young sage, right?
Young sage, and his eyes. There is not only his life inside there, but it seems like everyone else's. It's amazing. He looked like he's thinking about a lot of. The eyes are thinking. His brain is so full. His eyes are now taking over. You do a really good job at affecting a feeling.
Thank you so much. Actually, that was one of my favorite paintings, the one you just mentioned, the young sage right now. I absolutely, very rarely I have a favorite, but that's one of them. And because I wanted to capture what he is seeing, what, the people's lives that he was seeing, or the event that he was seeing, but at the same time, what he was feeling. And I wanted to correlate everything at the same time, all into one.
And it worked. Oh, God, yeah. I had a question for later. It was, what's your favorite painting so far? And it would be like asking somebody what their favorite snowflake shape is. It's
exactly.
It's crazy. I'm going to save my hard question, like what's your favorite color, for later.
Yeah. Those are always the hardest, I'm telling you.
Yeah. I want to talk to you about some of the visions and some of, to give my listener an idea of how these came about, or I shouldn't say how they came about, because we'll never know. In a way, do you ever perceive yourself as leaving and going on a trip, or like holding God's hand and he takes you out and shows you something?
I wouldn't say almost like leaving on a trip. I would probably say, in a sense, at the same time while I am here, my spiritual self always keeps on traveling and going on adventures. I would say it almost both myselves are doing individual tasks, but as a whole. It's very complicated.
Term astral travel, does that?
I haven't heard of this term before.
Okay, astral traveling is the perception, like you could be fast asleep and actually sitting up and looking back down, and your body's still there, and you can go wherever you want.
Oh, that's a beautiful term.
Your spirit actually can travel outside of what I call our meat sack, our skeleton and meat collection, and your spirit can go. You're still connected, and you can come back and you go back to sleep, or you go back into your body. And people talk about astral traveling as, I do this at night, I can go see X, and, it gets into all these things where, the military do it to look at some military base somewhere. That's what I was wondering, if that is the sensation that you get, that you actually can, your soul or your spirit, I call it. So there, and then it's semantics. So what you may call soul, I call spirit, or what you call spirit, other people call soul. But our spirit energy leaves our physical body. And
it's very interesting what you just said, because I do recall many times that in the past, especially when I was 5 years old, what I would happen to do, somehow I would inadvertently went into someone else's eyes and lived through their life, and I would experience their hardship or their joy, and I would kind of almost come back into the Akiane body, and I would feel everything that happened to that specific person. It was almost like you're almost like a nomad going through one part of the galaxy, or going and living through someone else's lives. And it's a very interesting thing that you just said. I have to remember that term.
Yeah, astro traveling, it's a term, more of a spiritual term, but it's very kind of on the cutting edge of the belief that our spirit, our soul, our energy is universal and transient. We can, once we're done on this plane here, our energy still exists. So why not be able to leave? And some people can do it, and I can't. You can be taught it. Most it comes naturally. A friend of mine who had a near-death experience, it didn't bother him.
Oh wow! This is oh wow! This is amazing.
He actually died and separated himself from his body.
Gee,
and was escorted to heaven. At which point he went through a number of. It seemed like he was gone for a few hours. His name is Eugene Braxton, and he's a very, very interesting gentleman. He then met what he can only describe as the God source, the God, which was just an energy that came to him and said, "You got to go back."
Oh wow!
Zips back, but he remembers every point of it because he, as a kid, he was doing this out of body thing, but he thought everyone else could do it. When you were growing up and you were doing the sketching and seeing your visions, is that kind of where you were? Because you were, again, separated from the influences from the outside world, no television, and limited books, came out of a very non-religious based family. Your mother being an atheist and your dad being basically agnostic, but you had no influences from the outside to do with anything like this. What would you express? How would you explain what was going on? Did you think everyone else had the same thing when they were young?
There was this one experience that happened to me when I was around 5.5 years old. And I do remember quite clearly that it was in Missouri, Mount Morris. It was in Missouri. And I was walking inside our house, and all of a sudden my consciousness went black, and I felt my spirit or soul being lifted up and went into like millions of pieces. And it turned out that I was physically gone for 9 to 10 hours. And my mom and my dad, they searched everywhere, and they, there was police at our house, and there were search dogs everywhere, and they couldn't find me. And in the meantime, I felt that I was going and doing these journeys, and I was meeting people in this spiritual world, these souls. And after, it felt like forever. I felt like I was there for the longest time. And in that brief moment, I started seeing my whole entire family from above, in a sense, even the police dogs, the police going around the neighborhoods and handing out my pictures. And I felt this need to come back. And I remember in that instant, the pieces that were scattered came together as one. And I was back right where I left, and it was in the middle of the hallway. And there was 2 police officers, and my mom were right there 15 feet away from me. And they turned around, and they couldn't fathom the fact that I was right there. And that was one of the most memorable experiences. And that kind of, in a sense, propelled my mom and my dad to open up new possibilities of different worlds and spirituality. And from that moment on, at the time my mom came up to me, and I do remember the question she asked. She was crying, and she asked me, "Where have you been?" And I was extremely tired, and I had, these raccoon eyes, and I just said one word, just one sentence. And I was like, "You wouldn't understand, but I have so much to do." And from that point on, I kind of, that was my point where I used art every single day as my gateway to express what I saw during that experience.
We are with Akiane Kramarik. Please go to her go get married to Akiane. Go to her website. It's just Akiane.com. That's AKIANE.com. I could just imagine. I've been a Mountie up in Canada for 28 years, policeman up here. And no, we don't ride horses and wear the red outfit all the time. But just saying, I could just imagine me standing in a hallway after a 10-hour search for somebody, look up, and there you are. I would have more questions that would fill a notebook up than your parents would.
That is so true, because, from even that day was the most unusual day, and everybody, the whole squad, the whole team, my family, my dad, he can track a mouse in 20-mile radius. That's how good he is in the detective, and he couldn't find me. And it was a day where no one really understood what the heck happened. But there was this, at the end of the day with the policeman, there was a policeman who came up to me and gave me a teddy bear, which I still have today. And, he said, this is for, if you need anything to hug, just keep this to your side. So I still have that teddy bear today. So that was quite of a memorable experience. That's for sure.
Now, you've come back from that, and you had a lot to do. So off you went and you did it, do you believe you were tasked with a number of things? And if so, have you completed all the tasks?
I don't remember the whole entire experience, but I do know that the memories that I came back with, and those memories were these stories that I saw, these places, these almost galactic planets and these peoples, and I've seen so much that it was so hard for me to even fathom. But I do know that it was, for me, I think those were the those were the subjects that I needed to paint and to show and to share with everyone. So that's probably what why I said that in the past. I needed to paint all the things that I saw, and or else I would forget them. So that's what I intended to do, and I'm still doing it to date. I'm still trying to finish all the things that I've tried to remember.
Okay, don't finish them too quickly, just in case they're going to call you home after you're done. We always leave one outstanding. So do it when you're like 100 years old. And go,
that's a very good point, James.
I have a 13-year-old daughter who does ballet, and her favorite painting is the ballerina tying up her pointe shoes. So.
Oh, that's fantastic.
She told me I had to tell you that because that's.
Oh, tell her I love that. Tell her I love watching ballet as well.
We go back, and one of your most favorite paintings, or I'm not going to say your favorite, but one of the most iconic paintings that you did, the Prince of Peace. Mm-hmm. Can you tell me about that one? How old were you? And really just kind of tell me from start to finish, how the heck did Akiane paint that?
Oh, this painting is actually dated back 3 years before. So this whole story started around 6 years old, I believe 6.5. And at the time I was seeing these snapshots of pictures of this particular image, this particular face. And I couldn't put it together because I didn't have the full image yet in my head. And after about 3 years went by, I finally pieced the image together. And it was extremely technically difficult, but I knew I had to paint it. And in order to paint that, I needed also a physical model. So around 8 years old, just when I turned 8, I decided to start searching for a model. And I asked my mom to drive me everywhere. And for a full 6 months, I would go from mall to grocery stores to the park, the beach. I would go everywhere just to see if I can find a perfect model. And there was a time at the end where I completely gave up, and I almost put my hands up in the air and says, unconsciously, I just blurted out and I said, I give up, but if you really want me to paint this image, bring the model to my front door. Well, it turned out, be careful what you ask for, because almost 5 hours later, I heard a knock on the door, and I opened the door, and there stood a almost 6.5 foot tall carpenter who heard from a friend that an artist that was in my house was looking to paint the face of Christ. Mm-hmm. But he did not expect that the artist was a 8-year-old girl. So a lot of explaining and a lot of convincing took place, and this model happily stood for me and modeled for me when I was 8 years old. And I placed almost all my memories that I had of that image onto this specific piece. And that's how I finished it after 40 hours. And I lost 4 teeth in the process.
Well, it's a heck of a fight.
Yeah.
He was a big model. You probably got a good punch in. Of course you were, that 40 hours you're losing teeth. That is,
I was still 8 years old. I was still growing.
Still growing, and 40 hours of a growth spurt right in the middle of a painting.
I know.
Now, it's cute that he was a carpenter. Interesting, I should say, more not than cute, but a carpenter coming through like that. And I heard through an interview that, or someone was saying that if you put the Shroud of Turin over top of that painting, matches quite well. Well, I did that. I actually found an image of the Shroud of Turin online, got your painting, and put them in a program, a little art program that I have, and I kept putting them back over top of each other, and I went, okay, that's just freaky.
Oh, this is one of the things that even amazing. Baffled me, because we got a call, I believe it was 6 years ago, and they gave us, I apologize for my memories, but I don't recall the professor who did this for me. It's a known fact that the painting of Prince of Peace is the closest match for the Shroud of Turin, and what is the resemblance is amazing.
Yeah, it is.
Even for me, I am so honored to be able to see that.
And again, for the listener, you had no idea what the Shroud of Turin was.
I did not know until they showed it to me 6 years ago. I have absolutely no idea what the Shroud of Turin was at all.
Yeah. I was going to say you should get out more, but no, you're fine. You're fine. Everything you need comes to you. So it's okay that way. This painting, and for those, my listener out there, if you want to do this, look at the Shroud of Turin, look at the Prince of Peace. The nose is the right length. The bones in the eyebrows are amazing. The cheekbones are amazing. It's incredible. The model that, stood for you, is he still around? Have you ever met him again?
Yes, he's definitely still around. Every now and then I do always keep in contact with them. Their son and his wife are extremely good friends of ours, so we always keep in contact.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I was kind of worried and he left and was never seen again.
You never know.
He went into kind of the ether and disappeared, and angels singing and things. Do you have, I'm guessing you believe in angels, because that's kind of a gimme. It goes along with this. Have you ever had a chance to speak to any of your personal angels?
You know what? This is when I was a child, definitely when I was 3.5, 4 years old, I do vividly recall that there was this woman of a very light being who kept on following me everywhere. And for months and months, I would just look at her, and I would just, my mom would just look at me, and I would just stare in a distance with nothing to look at. And she would ask me, "Who are you looking at?" And, I would, obviously I'm a very shy person at the time. I would deny the fact that I was looking at this female angel. And at 6 months later, what I did, I don't know why I did this, but I wanted to become like her. So she had this amazing white teeth. When what happened was I took a toothpaste and I tried to put it on my teeth to make it and rub it and keep it in there and just to make it white. And I still have a stain to date. What happened to that event? But I drew her about more than 50 times just to show it to everyone who I was seeing. And I know she's still with me, but after around 8 years old, it became more of a she became part of my sight instead of she was in my sight.
Okay. Kind of explain that to me. She was part of my sight as opposed to being in your sight.
It's almost like saying if you place an object in front of you, you would see that object. But now it's more of she is seeing that object with me. It's like we move at the same time. We look at things at the same time, but you feel the presence on the side of you, not in front of you now, but like almost like a comfort blanket that is over you.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's what a nice angel to have with you.
I'm very blessed.
When you went on, and again, I'm going back looking at, thinking about some of your paintings that were more, kind of out, I should say out there, but around the age of 10, you painted pyramids and the kind of the universe and that type of subject of things that you had seen in visions. So around 9 and 10, were you guided to areas of consciousness or unconsciousness or locations that you had never seen before? And then how would you explain, again, without having books or the access to the Hubble telescope, how do you explain, or I shouldn't say how do you explain, because you and I both know how you explain it, but how would you articulate the way that you were shown the nebulas and the galaxies and the planets? It's amazing.
You know, this is a very interesting question, because when everyone asks, you know, how do you get your ideas or how do you remember them? Were you shown? And you know what? I'm going to be extremely open of the process. This is most of the time what happens is, in the beginning, I absolutely have no idea what I'm going to be painting at all. Even the minutes that I'm going into a canvas, I have absolutely no idea. And usually what happens is I would, not intentionally just take a single color from my drawer, and these pieces will start coming to me just by touching the colors, just by putting it on the palette and just dabbing it with no intention on the canvas. And there was interesting, actually about 3 months ago, I just finished my painting called 16 Lives in the Wind. And this particular painting took me 7 months to complete, because in the beginning, I had this feeling of a carefree spirit. That's all I felt. This is all I thought. I did not see any image or nothing like this. And that morning, what I did, I just took just a white color, and all of a sudden these faces started to appear one after another. And it was 16 faces. And I would whitewash one after another. And this is about over 1,000 hours into my painting, where I finally found this pure, true being that I was searching for, the light, the silence that I was searching for, the character, the emotion. And that's how it is with me in my process. Is I would get a feeling first. I would get a color first, and it's a journey. It's a process with every single painting.
As a amateur painter, like I can do like maybe 2 rooms on a whole bucket of paint. But no, I used to paint when I was a kid. I used to paint with acrylic. To listen to you describe the process is completely foreign to me. It's
Yes.
incredible. It's mind-blowing, actually. And I'm thinking back to a painting called Jesus in the Missing Years,
Mm-hmm.
where he's kind of on his crouched down, and it looks like he's speaking with his hands open, but he is in the universe, and he's just up there with the earth kind of to his, kind of almost behind him, like he's kind of protecting it from something. What is it you feel about the religious-based paintings from that time, that mid-teen years, which was only, a couple of weeks ago? No, it wasn't that long ago. 6 years ago. Do you recall what you felt through that phase or that person?
From all I know is the moment I touched a pencil or a painting was the moment I knew I needed to project everything that I saw, felt, or heard. Whether it was, it's almost like I would consider myself a visionary journalist artist that creates and projects, all, backgrounds, beliefs, and all different, is it, the future, the past. And during these years, when I was, during like 8 to 14 years old, I would be heavily involved in these spiritual paintings. In particularly the Christ, it's actually not a trilogy, but I think I have more than that. I have 6 paintings or 5 paintings. But I definitely felt this desire, this need to portray this life story, this timeline of this particular, this legend, this figure, the spiritual figure that, everyone knows. But this is ironically at the time where I started to paint these figures. I absolutely had no idea what the name was. I didn't know the name was Jesus. I didn't know if the name was God or Christ. I just felt I needed to paint this particular face, this story. And that's kind of how I am with art. Even though I don't understand the names, the titles, the description behind something, I would just paint it and do the best I can to share that story.
Yeah, it comes out. They always say is one picture is worth 1,000 words, but yours are a few more words. So they're not only a few more words, but there's other pictures. Look in the eyes, fall into them. One of your paintings, it's a black woman with a red hat. What's that one called?
The Planted Eyes?
Oh yeah, Planted Eyes. That's right. That is an incredible story. When I say that, I mean, I see an incredible story in the painting. What was it in you that drove you to paint that one? This is actually, I believe, the second painting I've ever done. This took me about 15 hours to complete when I was 8 years old. I think it just went on my birthday. I think I completed this painting. And, I can't really describe that feeling, but I felt that I was living in Idaho at the time, and there were, for reasons, there are not a lot of cultural differences there. There's not a lot of, backgrounds and races that are all in almost like a metropolitan city where I can go and, listen to their stories and see people of different races and cultures. So I decided at 8 years old I wanted to portray that particular culture, and I felt that there is so much we don't understand, so much beauty and so much story that's behind this particular woman, and I want to leave it up to the person who's looking at the painting to make up a story, because every person is different, but I wanted to reveal that the suffering that she went through, but at the same time, the beauty and the hope that she's looking forward to. And I wanted to portray that in the Planted Eyes. And it worked. It worked well. I get strength out of it. I get sadness, a lot of sadness, and a lot of hope for the future.
Yes,
all
and that's
from one face.
Yes, I'm very happy that you felt the same, because my paintings that I do, the best thing I could do right now, and the best ability, I want to showcase the word hope in every single painting that I do.
Do you have an airplane landing on your roof?
I think that is our next door neighbor who is landscaping at the moment.
Oh, okay, good. I just, I'd hate it if you're talking to me and all of a sudden a helicopter comes down and
that would be a coincidence, definitely.
And that was Aki. She is gone now. Everything's okay. Now, you say you use models for this. The woman that you used for that one, did you get a life story from her? Did she actually talk to you about herself?
No, she did not. I met Actually, this was not just one person. I actually met 3 people, and what I wanted to do was to combine their expression that they had in their eyes, and I wanted to combine into one specific person, and that's kind of how it came about.
Oh, wonderful. We are talking to Akiane Kramarik. Please go see her website, akiane.com, and look at what she's done. Read about who she is. Now, you have heard these terms growing up. Of course, they're terms put on you by people you don't know. Starseed Indigo. Once you heard these, did you look them up, and what do they mean to you?
You know, every time I go out and to another show or an event, there's always a new word that I have to go back and look up. There's crystal child, indigo, prodigy. I didn't even know what prodigy was until I was 9 years old. And there's so much words and descriptions and titles that was laid upon me. But I am extremely honored, to be honest. Yeah, no matter what kind of title it was, I'm really honored to be able to be called that. But at the same time, I do know that once you put a title on someone, it always has a little bit of a downside where there's a restriction, where there is a limit, there is a expectation that you're supposed to rise up on. But so even to date, I still don't consider myself a crystal child, a prodigy, or like an indigo. I just consider myself a very, very hardworking, dedicated person that really loves art and will do anything to achieve it. So, yeah.
Do you think a lot of this came from homeschooling? Not being exposed to things that were, I want to say flighting, like just like a hit and run. Did you watch such and such TV show last night where this guy did this and was wearing a goofy tie and giggle? And it's like a whole bunch of information thrown at you that kind of was outside of your box.
It might definitely be a part of that, because I do recall every time, when I was with my family, they would be this, it's a very fluid, optimistic group where we don't really put any sort of label. We just let each other grow in every sense. And I think that was extremely helpful for me, because I always recall I was such a silent. I didn't speak that much when I was a child, and I was really happy that my parents and my brothers allowed me to use other mediums to speak, in a sense, to express my feelings, and I think that was really lovely for them to do.
Oh. Do you feel other people's energy?
Every time I meet a new person or speak, something would trigger in me, and I would, it got so much when I was 7 years old. I met so many people, and I felt their feelings so much that it became almost very hard for me. It was almost a weight that was on my shoulder, because I would carry their burden or their story with me every day, because I would remember them very vividly, and I would feel them very vividly. So yes, it almost came to pass where I was extremely,
high anxiety?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that. I would probably just say, I absorbed a lot of people, during, they didn't even have to speak. I would just look at them and I would just feel them. My mom, always said that I was very, intuitive, and I would, as a child, what happened was I would just look at a person, and after meeting them, I before meeting them, I would tell exactly what I felt about that particular person and their life story. And, after the meeting, it was almost all the time spot on. But, I don't know. I just allow my feeling to be almost a second brain for me because it's something that, as an artist, I see feelings and I see that gut feeling and that intuitiveness very, very valuable in everyday life.
Is there anyone on your mother's side of the family that she can think back that was intuitive too? Her father was a very famous movie director and a producer in the country of Lithuania, and he always, as I recalled, he always felt the need to, when he was working with actors and actresses, he did the same thing. He felt the same way, and he went into poetry as well. And I think that kind of, I absorbed a little bit of my mom's side, the poetry aspect as well. And obviously my dad is extremely sensitive in every person that we meet. So I think it's a bit of everything. So yeah, you got a good genetic background for being asensitive. I think it was really just the perfect storm, the perfect conditions of homeschooled and away from media interference and radio and television, an overburden of religious beliefs, or doctrine, depending on what you were being influenced by. You were just, again, that blank canvas. When this changed, when spiritualism came into your family, how did that affect your parents and specifically your mother? Because, yeah, you can be agnostic and whatever the belief system, but being an atheist, you just kind of think, okay, in my life and your mother's life growing up, that is something she just never, religion was something she didn't buy into. How did that change? And then after it changed in the family, and this is a two-part question for those. After they change or the change happens to your family, how did it affect the family group?
It's my whole life, my whole journey and my family's journey were almost like a two-way highway. And in the beginning, it was very interesting because on one side, I did have these spiritual experiences and I would often not say anything, but I would just draw it. And, at the same time, I would just be around my family, and whom they were not, very open to, or they didn't have the knowledge of the idea of spirituality. So in the beginning, it was a very, peculiar situation. But the moment I started trying to explain it through words, the moment with my vocabulary started to improve was the moment I started sharing. And when you do have, like you said, the right ingredients, my mom was extremely a good listener, and she would just listen to me, and she would, I think after dozens of hours, after our conversations, she had this, I'm very honored to say it, but she always has this trust that she trusts in her children a lot. And slowly she started becoming an open to that possibility. But after that experience that I had when I was 5.5 years old was the moment where she was completely, in that position where she would take every word that I spoke into consideration and to a possibility. And so did my father afterwards. And because everything that I spoke, if it was in minute detail, he was working 3 jobs at the time. He would go to work and he would share this, my experiences with other people. And those people would, say, wow, she's right, because the information your daughter gave was in this particular book, or was in this particular, scientific paper. And slowly the facts starting building up, and my dad started becoming more open-minded, and slowly my family began coming with me in this journey of looking over past this atmosphere that we call Earth. And to date, I think, even though we in a sense, we don't consider ourselves to belong to a specific religion. I think we're extremely spiritual, and we love absolutely everybody, and we all have our different spiritual paths. And I did finally understand that every person on this planet, no matter who they are and how they grew up and what information that we're given, in a sense, no one is wrong and no one is, 100% right. I think we're all on the same page. We're all on this journey to find the truth. And I think the moment we stop and the moment we convince ourselves we found the truth is the moment where our life as humans kind of cease to exist. So we need to keep on searching together as a whole. And I think that's extremely important.
Keeping searching is the goal. It's moving forward and looking. And it's those people who have said, this is who I am, this is what I believe in, and I'm not budging. It's almost like you have to poke them in the butt to say, hey, get going. You've got to, you're still here to learn.
Mm-hmm.
And
exactly. I think we all are in a sense are in this school called life.
Oh yeah.
That's at some point at the end of our years we would graduate. But
yeah, and don't get it figured out too early.
Exactly.
Because they call you home. So I was talking to a very famous psychic in the U.S. and she said that we all can manifest, which is like meditating and pulling things forward that we want if it's true to us. Mm-hmm. And if it's, again, the right time. But don't get good at manifesting to the point that you can manifest everything, because then there's no use being here anymore and there's nothing more to learn. So be careful what you wish for, as they say, because if you still like being on this plane, well, hang tough and continue to learn. One of the biggest things we forget is growing up, and I think we may have talked about this earlier, but it's just loving other people and learning to love. And there are frustrations in our life. Frustration leads to anger in some, but just because we're frustrated, take that deep breath. It's like road rage. It's
absolutely. You're so true. You're so right, because I believe that in the end, our goal as humans, as mankind, we need to reach for that ultimate goal is love. I think we all need to somehow take in consideration that there's beyond today, there is always tomorrow, and we don't need to focus on the absolute negative details. We need to look at the broader things in life.
You painted again into the mid-teens. There were, and I know from having a mid-teen teenager who is 16, who is completely different from you. She's a very, very high empath. She feels other people's feelings and just absorbs everyone else's issues and brings them home. And we've had to really have her centered, and she's a lot better now. But being that mid-teen, did you go through the issues that other mid-teen girls went through with the self-doubt, kind of running more ego than I've got a pimple in the middle of my forehead, I'm never going to go outside again? And I ask that because at the age of 16, you painted a picture called Time. And it's different from a lot of your other. It's an abstract with a woman's face. And if our listener could go to Akiane.com and look up picture Time, I want to say picture all the time. It's the painting Time. To me, it's very different than everything else. And it's right at that age of the internal conflict as you're growing up.
I can't deny the fact that obviously, there are some days where you start self-doubting yourself, in the society, what are you going to wear? Is my hair okay? Like, there's always, the added, sometimes the characters would go in a waves, but, I did ask my family, since I am working on a lot of projects, and I have to ask my family for their correct memories of how I was as a teen, as a child. And they always kept on mentioning that, I never had that character of self-indulgence or ego. What I often did, I became so, the word that I probably, in my mid-teens was probably the fact that if there was a painting that, it wasn't finished or wasn't perfect, I would just never show it to anyone, even to my family. I would lock myself in my studio until it's finished. Actually, to date, my family don't ever go into my studio because it's almost that sense where it's my creative world. I never tend to, like self-recognition, self-attention. Even as a child, it was very, the moment I went on to the Oprah show and I went to radio shows and television, it was a very new world to me. And at the same time, I love sharing my story with everyone and meeting those amazing people. But I never got the concept of, okay, let's use this to make myself look bigger. I never understood that concept. I just understood that this is a tool, this is a gateway to share. I never had the intention of, blowing it up into, disproportionate, ratio and try to position myself higher and quite opposite. My family kind of tells me to, it's okay, it's okay to be, confident in this area. Mm-hmm. So during those teen years, I obviously, all teenager girls, we always have the insecurities. I am not going to deny that, but I did remember when I was painting the time painting, it was on a tile plate. And one day it was around it was midwinter and I went to the garage and I love feeling textures a lot. And what happened was I came across, sorting out these storage, things in our garage, and I came across this tile. And the moment I felt the texture, there was a moment, an idea just came to me about our perception of time and how long and how old and how many memories the specific rock, the specific tile went through. And it was almost like that kind of was the sand dropping for the hourglass type of idea where, okay, it's not just a specific tile, it's everyone, it's that tree, it's that animal. How do we perceive time and how quick it goes, or how do people retain memories? And I wanted to record that on the specific texture, because everything has a memory. And it has, in a way, I believe everything is ageless. We're all ageless in a way. And I wanted to also showcase that.
Thank you, Akiane. And thank you for tuning into episode 1 of our interview with Akiane Kramarik. Go to her website, akiane.com. Look at the painting she did, Time, the one we were just talking about. And as she was telling you about the textures and feeling that tile and kind of getting what she perceived was that tiles, and then projecting it to a stone or anything, their travel and all the things they have seen. Where you and I would dig through a bunch of old stuff in a garage and pull out something and look at it, and we would have a memory. what we had with that. Or if it was our parents, we may have a thinking. We may start thinking, well, I wonder what my father did with this and what kind of memories he had with it. Where it was the opposite. When she picked the tile up, she was thinking of it from the tile's point of view and the memories the tile had. If you go to her website, Akiane.com, and look through gallery and see her painting of time, the one we were just talking about, you can see how the texture of that tile that she had picked up in the garage had influenced her painting. This painting almost looks like it's three-dimensional. Or if you rubbed your hand across it, would be very, very bumpy, and there's a lot in there. There's a bit of a story that goes with it. Aki writes, I always paint my own visionary or biographical stories I encounter, but one summer while teaching young children, I got inspired to adapt and illustrate an ancient fable about time on a tile. Once upon a time, on a remote island, there lived 6 beings. Happiness, knowledge, love, sadness, wealth, and vanity. Living within close proximity from each other, they got to know each other quite well, but one day they discovered that their island started sinking. One by one, they built small boats and left, except for Love. Love didn't want to abandon her beloved home. Only when the island was completely flooded, Love standing up to her knees in water, she decided to ask for help. Wealth was passing by in her boat when Love asked, Wealth, can you take me with you? And Wealth answered, sorry, Love, I can't. There's a lot of gold and silver in my boat. There's no place for both of us in here. We'll definitely sink. Next, Love asked Vanity, who was sailing by. But Vanity also refused. I can't help you, Love. You're all soaking wet and might damage my boat. Sadness was rowing her boat nearby, so Love asked her, Sadness, please take me along with you. Oh, Love, I'm so sad right now. I need to be by myself, she replied in a gloomy voice. Happiness passed by Love, too, but she was so preoccupied with her own elated thoughts that she did not even hear when Love called for her. Suddenly, Love heard someone's voice. Come, Love, I'll take you. She turned her head and saw an elder with a tattered headscarf she had not seen before. An overjoyed Love jumped into the boat, and when Love landed on dry land, she was greeted by Knowledge, who had been the first to land there a while ago. The elder climbed out of the boat and went her own way without saying goodbye. Who helped me? Love asked Knowledge. It was Time, Knowledge answered. Time? Love was surprised. Why Time? Because only Time is able to know how valuable love is, Knowledge smiled. Thanks for listening, everyone. Go to Akiane.com. Stay tuned. Our next episode is part 2 of our interview with Akiane Kramarik.
Watching you while you sleep all alone.
All right, that's it. Let's roll. And hey! Let's be careful out there.
Far over the snow, what are those voices? Angry wolves on the trail. We are after you, dead or alive. We are out to get you, dead or alive. And forget your toes. If you're the one, better run away. Son, you are done. Throw your gun away. Here come the Mounties to get the men that are now. done, you are done. Throw your